welcome all. This is the Regeneration and Property Committee meeting on the 8th of March 2023. So members, those in physical attendance, can we, with an electronic device, make sure it's muted? And any remote participants, can they keep their camera and microphone off unless they wish to speak, and ideally not use the camera facility as this affects the quality of the meeting. Please note that this is going to be recorded and data collected during the recording of the meeting and will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. And members accessing the meeting remotely should use their SBC or KCC laptop to participate virtually. If you join using the link on the website or on a mobile or tablet device, it is not always possible to identify you, and you may not be recorded as in remote attendance. Please speak loudly and clearly. Follow me into the microphones and switch the microphone off after speaking. Right. Welcome everyone to this evening's Regeneration and Property Committee meeting, including the visiting members attending remotely, and I can see a few there. I will advise you that following staff and attendance tonight, so we've got the Director of Regeneration and Neighbourhoods, Emma Wiggins. Is she remotely? No, she's not, is she? She's not here, so apologies, she's not. But we have got, instead, we've got the Head of Regeneration, Economic Development and Property, Joanne Johnson, sitting to my right, and the Interim Property Services Manager, David Johnson, sitting on my left. Economic Development and External Funding Manager, Kieran Mansfield, just next to Joanne here, and Democratic Services, we've got Billy Attaway in the room and Philippa Davis is online. There's no fire drill planned for tonight, so if the alarm sounds, those in attendance should leave via the exits indicated and assemble outside as directed. Do not use the lift. And does anyone in attendance require any extra assistance? Don't think so, no. And are there any apologies for absence? I've got some confirmation of substitute here, so I know that we have apologies from Councillor James Hall, who is substituted by Derek Harnell, but Simon Clark, who is substituting Glyn. Is Glyn here? Councillor Whelan. Okay, that's fine, no problem. Have we got any other apologies? Nope. Right, lovely. Okay, anyone got any declarations of interest they wish to declare on any of the items in the agenda? No? Okay, members, do you approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of January, and that's minute numbers 595 to 608 as a correct record? Yeah, all agreed. Lovely, thank you. And the following items are Part B reports for decision by the Regeneration and Property Committee. So item 5 is the forward decisions plan. So let's just bring that up. It is on page 5. So I think we've got something to add to it, haven't we? Joanne, would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you. So the planned and reactive maintenance contract awards can be added to the forward plan for July. We had initially been thinking September for that, but we will be able to bring that forward to July, ready for the new contract to commence from the middle of October. Thank you.
Sorry, that's July. Okay, you all got that. Right. Anyone, anything else? No? Great, thank you. Okay, item 6 on the agenda, which is page 7 in the agenda pack, Levelling Up Fund. So I'd like to ask the officer to introduce the report. So I take it's Joanne first. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So the report sets out 1 recommendation around governance and 3 recommendations around approach to procurement. This, of course, follows the good news in January that our bid for Sheerness Revival had been successful, which followed the application made in August last year. Section 2.3 in the report summarises what the project hopes to achieve. And you'll recall it's a wide-ranging project with benefits across health, education, leisure, community, wellbeing, employment and skills. Section 2.6 sets out the next steps. I'm pleased to update further. We had a good host of candidates for both projects. We're interviewing candidates this week and next for both of the posts that will be funded by the bid. We are yet to receive the final memorandum of understanding or grant agreement that we need to sign with government. We have a generic draft that they've provided and we've reviewed, but receipt of the final version, we understand, will be after government has completed subsidy control checks on the project. And subsidy control is the post-EU equivalent of state aid checks. In terms of governance, Appendix 1 shows what we put forward in the Sheerness Revival business case as the framework for oversight. It depicts that. And the recommendation tonight adds flesh to those bones. Our proposal is that we establish a member working group. We're suggesting this because it appears to work well and be favoured for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund oversight processes. And specifically, the report recommends that group would have 3 key functions. One would be supporting the delivery team in monitoring progress against agreed output and outcome indicators, which we will commit to in that memorandum of understanding, which we set out in the business case. Also monitoring progress against financial profile and delivery schedule. I see a role for that group in reviewing progress against the agreed communications and engagement plan, which I think that working group would have a role in approving, and approving project adjustment requests, which are those requests that are considered to constitute a material change to the project and where central government approval would be required. In terms of the procurement recommendations, officers are recommending that we use a specific framework to undertake all development works for beach fields and the public realm projects up to and including REBA Stage 4 or cost certainty. Martin Cassell, Head of Environment and Leisure, and I have met the framework promoters, and their expertise and supply chain sits exactly within public sector leisure refurbishment projects, so is very well suited to what we are trying to achieve. The report mentions a due diligence exercise to be undertaken before we would formally sign up to that. Initially, procurement and legal both confirmed from their initial checks there are no substantial hurdles, and it would appear absolutely fine to use that framework. The second recommendation is then to use this same framework to identify and to recommend a delivery contractor for the beach fields and public realm projects to be appointed following approval of this committee. And finally, the last recommendation on this report is asking members to agree in principle to the convening of an extraordinary meeting of the committee to agree contract award if procurement and commissioning timescales aren't supported by committee timescales, and if the delay presented would impact on the timely delivery of the programme. This recommendation is because the funding is time-bound, and we know that central government, not to mention our community and stakeholders, are keen to see delivery at the fastest pace that we can realistically achieve. So it's to facilitate that if circumstances demand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask, before it brings members in, on the subsidy control checks that they do, typically how long do they take? Are we talking a few weeks here or several months?
So there was a government webinar on this a couple of weeks ago. They allow themselves 40 working days to respond to the information that they're asking projects to confirm. We've got until the 14th of March to confirm the further detail they're looking for. So we are looking end of April time,
right,
at the outside for their response.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Truelove, I think you indicated you'd like to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, the euphoria of winning this bid is still sustaining us, but in the end, the delivery is absolutely vital, and the reputation as council will revolve around the successful delivery. A couple of questions. Clearly, there's what we're delivering and there's what East Kent colleges are delivering. And it's very important to us that they are successful in their contracts and their build out of their college. What kind of liaison during the process of delivery will there be between us and East Kent colleges? To what extent will members be able to, in a sense, scrutinise the delivery by East Kent colleges? So that's one question. The other one is, I noticed there is a suggestion that we extend the period of delivery because of the late announcement of the bids around the country. Is that likely to be a successful attempt to extend the delivery period, or is that something that might be problematic depending on how the government feels and so on?
Yes, of course. Please come in, Jen.
Thank you. So we have already had the kick-off meeting with East Kent College Group around the delivery of the project from their perspective. The arrangement in terms of delivery is that we essentially passport the funding through to them. They are responsible for finding the contractor, for overseeing the programme. And Appendix 1 sets out that it's the EKC delivery board that will have oversight of what East Kent College are doing. Of course, members will have oversight in terms of the outputs and the outcomes that are assigned to EKC Group and spend against profile and delivery milestones. So there will be effectively, for that part of the project, 2 levels of oversight that both come into play. In terms of the potential of success to extend the delivery timescale, government has indicated that requests will be positively received. They can't confirm at this stage. They don't allow us to submit a project adjustment request in advance of signing the grant agreement. The process very much has to be grant agreement, then the adjustment request. There is no reason to indicate it wouldn't be successful. We would be asking for an extension to mitigate the delay, so we're not asking beyond that. You might recall we were due to hear in the autumn if we were successful or otherwise, and projects were encouraged to begin delivery ASAP. So the business case set out that we would start our processes as soon as we got the green light from government, and that also assumes that we would get the grant agreement at an early stage, so that we had that comfort and confidence to start to spend. So we are looking to mitigate the delays as part of that process, not for anything else, not to extend beyond the delivery time frame, the delivery period that we set out. We would go to.
So the extension might be something between 3 and 6 months.
I think so. Yeah, I suspect about 6 months. So we expected to hear. We were working on the assumption we would hear in October last year because government said the autumn. We expect to get that grant agreement end of April this year. So that will be a 6-month delay.
Fair enough. And so on that thread around how this process works going forwards, obviously there have been other authorities who've gone ahead of us. I think you know one of them very well. In terms of, is there anything we can learn from them going through this process in terms of governance and how we direct this project? Are we sort of calling on them for lessons learned, as it were?
So yes, the Kent districts that have been successful are coming together as an informal group to do exactly that, to learn from experience, to share pains and to share successes. And the first meeting of that group is going to be this Friday.
Fabulous, excellent. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. I've got no real issues with what's here and agree with the working group. The only thing I just want to understand a bit more is on the use of UK leisure framework. Obviously, they're based down in Somerset. It would be good to be making sure that we're using more local companies and getting the decisions made more locally. So I can understand why we would go out and use a company to do all the procurement and move it along quicker. But what's being done to make sure that as it does start moving forward and we've got contracts in place, that local companies will get sort of on the list and start doing the work. There's going to be a lot going on there, and it'd just be good if local companies are involved. And we've also, within here at 4.6, been given another option that rather than going with that company, we delegate contract all decisions to the head of Regeneration. It doesn't seem to be much in there, many reasons why we shouldn't go down that route. Obviously, probably more time for officers, which I can understand. But keeping, again, decisions more local seems like a better thing to me. But just if we can have a bit more understanding on why that approach is being taken and why we shouldn't do this other option.
I'm glad you said that was one of the ones I was going to ask. And actually, along that route, to add in before you answer, Joanne, is in that case, would we have any independent advice around that? So fire away.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of being able to use the local supply chain, I think we would look to our procurement team to advise on how best we can secure that. We do have a really strong track record in using local suppliers, and I wish I could remember the statistic, but Martin consulted a few weeks ago. We're in the top percentage of local authorities who keep their spending within the local catchment area. So 4.6, the question is around why the report doesn't recommend that the delegation is directly to me. I think because of the size of the delivery contract, which will be multi-millions, I felt that members would want to have direct oversight of that through the working group.
Yeah.
I would be comfortable with 4.6. I'd be comfortable with that coming to me, but that was my assumption around member thinking.
I think that's a fair assumption. Would the committee agree with that? Nod if you... Yeah, okay. Thank you. Councillor Whiting?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just picking up on a couple of points, really. I agree with the recommendations. I'm going to be voting for them. Picking up on something Roger Truelove said about the East Kent College, I wonder whether it's in order to invite a representative of the college to join the working group, so that we have that direct involvement. I don't want to, if that's not going to work within the governance arrangements in total, then let's not do it. But if it would add value to have a member of the East Kent College representative on that member working group as an invitee, then perhaps it's something I'll leave for others to consider. But I put it on the table. We do have a very strong local procurement policy here, and I'm pleased to hear, in response to Councillor Hunt's question, the answers that we got. One of the other things that we like to try to ensure are the training opportunities and apprenticeships are offered by those companies with whom we spend money, and we've got £20 million to spend. So I think we've got a fair bit of clout in trying to ensure that a good number of local young people or local people of whatever age are invited to participate via an apprenticeship or some sort of training in the delivery of the project. Thank you.
Okay. Joanne, would you like to comment on that at all?
Just to say I wholeheartedly agree. Looking to leverage the social value that we can from the contract of that size will be eminently sensible. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to this? Okay, let's go to the vote then. I'm voting on the recommendations. All those in favour? Unanimous? Oh, that's fine. Okay, yes. So unanimous for those in the room at the time we started. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 7. So I was on the right page, which is page 19. If we can, this is the land at Great Easthall. If I can ask the officer to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report relates to a piece of land of circa 2 acres located at the entrance to the Great Easthall housing development in Eastern Sittingbourne. The report sets out some of the background to that land. It was originally identified as a neighbourhood play area in the master plan for the Great Easthall development in a Section 106 agreement that dates back to 2004. The original intention for the land was a neighbourhood play area of circa 1,000 square metres, so it would take up approximately 1/8 of the site, with the remainder to be essentially mowed grass with some shrubbery around the edge. That has never been delivered by the developer, and the genesis really for what is now an offer on the table from Countryside Properties was a ward member's desire to try and promote the delivery of a community shop, because the community, I think, has rightly felt that it hasn't been delivered the amenities that it had hoped for under the original master plan. The detail as far as we have it of that offer from Countryside is in the report, but essentially it's the transfer of the land with £100,000 in lieu of the current obligations, and that offer in terms of the £100,000 represents a sum that we believe to be significantly below what the cost of meeting their current obligations would be in terms of Countryside Properties. The report also goes on to give some commentary in terms of the proposed community shop, and that clearly is a long way from delivery, but some of the work that has been undertaken and needs to be undertaken in respect of the feasibility of that as a proposal. The report goes on to, under the terms of the acquisitions policy, council's acquisition policy, the assumption is that the land would have a value of greater than 30,000. So the purpose of this report under the acquisitions policy is to come to members to check that they are happy for us to continue to negotiate with Countryside Properties in terms of the potential acquisition of that site. Any differentiation, if that were to happen, any transfer of the site would be happen, it would be subject to what would need to be a parallel process in terms of a change to the Section 106 agreement, which would need to be done by application because the Section 106 agreements that relate to this are more than 5 years old. The proposals as set out ask for members' agreements for officers to proceed with those negotiations. And to identify a site within, or a location within the site within which a community shop could be delivered, essentially to give the community confidence to undertake what would be a fairly substantial amount of work to look at the feasibility of the community shop. I think I'll stop there, Chairman. Take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring in. Write that down. I think this is one of those situations where certainly I think we've all experienced it in our wards, where there's been development and the delivery of said community facilities haven't come forward. And this has been a long time coming. And I'd like to pay tribute here to Councillor James Hall, who has doggedly pursued this, and quite rightly so, because I think the community, I understand, feel quite strongly that they should have had some community asset and benefit. And that is actually why this has come forward. It is for that reason. We've got 3 recommendations here, and I think the officers quite eloquently set out why it's necessary to progress those, and I think that should happen as soon as possible. Councillor Harrison, you wanted to speak.
Yeah, and Kieran has sort of clarified my question, which was, if you were supposed to put in a play area and you're coughing up 100 grand, and you're coughing up 100 grand instead of providing the play area, which isn't enough and wouldn't be enough to take in the 10 years worth of maintenance or whatever the conditions we had at that time, because I know now we will not have commuted sums. You either pay it forever and a day or we don't accept stuff. So whatever goes there, whether it is a play area or a community shop, if you ain't given us enough money, then we should be going back and saying, cough up, mate, or else. That is not technical terms, obviously. It's probably a technical way of putting it, but I just thought, yeah.
Councillor Whiting.
Thank you, Chairman. I've absolutely no problem with the community shop. If you look at the plan that's in the report, all the properties at the bottom right-hand side of that picture in the aerial shot actually all sit within Tenham and Linstead and are represented by Lloyd and myself, and we know from our residents how let down they feel that what they thought they were going to get hasn't been delivered either by the council or by the developers in turn. And a community shop is certainly something that we would support. There is an issue with the funding of this, and that's very clear. But we've got over these sort of things in the past. We had some land given to us down by the creek side, but through some careful work and a lot of hard work by the officers, we managed to build ourselves a skate park. We managed to find a home for the Dolphin Barge Museum on land that we were given by a developer. And so I think things are possible here. And if we want a shop, then we should be looking to find ways to get that shop, not simply accept that we need one and then go into a row with the developer about how much community sun we're going to get from them. Because £100,000, frankly, Chairman, won't buy you the services. You won't get the gas, the electricity, the water mains and the sewage and some off-street parking, let alone building anything on top of that piece of land. So it's not enough money. So we have to find other ways of doing it, which is why I've proposed a fourth recommendation, Chairman. If you'll allow me, I'll propose that. Now it's as written on the tabled paper. The officers investigate also an enabling development to bridge that funding gap by considering a hybrid retail residential development of some sort, a joint venture, and that could be with the landowner, it could be with another developer, it could be with Rainbow Homes, it could be with anybody. But let's have a look at how we might raise that gap funding so that we can actually get this thing delivered. Because otherwise we're going to sit here tonight, agree it's a good idea, and then in a few years' time we'll be saying, well, we still haven't got it built because actually there was no money for it. So my fourth recommendation, which I'm proposing, would hopefully point officers to come back to this committee with suggestions of how we fund that gap so that we can get this much needed community asset actually built and delivered for the people, not just of Great Eastall, but of Heron Fields, which is the areas that sit within Tenham and Linstead. So I therefore propose, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And do you have a seconder? Okay, so we'll put that out to the committee to debate. So is there anyone who wishes to comment on that? Councillor Truelove.
Could we, before we sort of make assumptions about the funding gap, have a little bit more of a clear perspective about what that funding gap is? Councillor Whiting said hybrid retail and residential, and then sort of said, well, it could be this, it could be that, it could be rainbow. I just have to say it can't be rainbow. I think that is a very unwise suggestion at this stage when Rainbow is still in the process of acquiring capital for the existing planned development. And it would be unwise, I think, to sort of say that this council can extend its capital programme. So that isn't a solution. There may be others. Rather than sort of say it could be this and could be that, I would appreciate the proposers actually saying what they really think is the way that we could have a hybrid.
Okay, so first off, I better make a declaration as I am a director of Rainbow and it's come up in the discussion. However, I don't think at this point it would preclude me because it's not a commitment to doing anything. Councillor Hunt, would you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you. I suppose before I saw this proposal come forward, I had the similar things, not just with this piece of land, but any land that we look at as a council, especially with how we are financially at the moment, we need to be making sure that if there's any potential that we can get land and get the most from it, we should be doing that. And I think that this would be a good one to do. If there's something else that can be done in discussions with developers, we could work with that developer and, okay, they may, sort of, we've got to change 106 and things, but if there's discussions ongoing with them and something better comes up and maybe partnering with them or something, and we get something more out of it, then that should be done. I agree with everything that's in here with it's going to be coming back to us whatever happens. I think there's going to be a lot of work that's going to be done and it's probably going to take some time to do. I don't think anything that's going to come forward probably quickly with this. So I agree with the recommendation that's come forward to just add that in. It's not going to hurt officers to go away and just look at this. A concern I do have, which will come out in all of the way this is looking at the feasibility study and things, is obviously there's also proposals that have come forward with planning committee with other development nearby, which does bring in a shop as well. So that is also something else that if that was approved, that's then another commercial issue that there is a shop and is a community store then going to be needed. If it isn't, then something else needs to be found for this land. And if there's discussions taking place to find other options, that could be better than what we're looking at with the play area, etc. So it's just looking at it. I can't see any harm in that.
Oh, thank you. Switch my mic off. Councillor Harrison, and then I've got Councillor Thomas, followed by Councillor Truelove. Councillor Harrison, please fire away.
Yeah, Councillor Hunt just said, I can't see any harm in officers looking at it. I know. With that other pair of hands you've got, you can do all sorts of things. It's not as if you haven't got a programme of work that is probably more than you can, I wouldn't say more than you can manage, because I know that you're all working more than 37 hours a week anyway. But we do need to be careful. We have a programme of work. If you're going to put something else in, what are you taking out? Because, you know, we do have to look after the health and well-being of our staff. And there's only so many hours in the day. The priority, as far as I'm concerned, no disrespect to the councillor up at Great East Hall, the priority is the levelling up bit. Full stop. Other stuff comes after that. Now, as I say, if you've got another pair of hands, I'm sure you could put a lot more in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Eddie Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking through the original recommendations 1, 2 and 3 and noting that recommendation 1 talks about it coming back to committee for approval. And looking at that and recommendation 2 and 3, I feel this additional proposed recommendation is premature, and at the moment it's not appropriate to bring it up. It may, this type of proposal, be suitable once it comes back to committee, and if negotiations with the developer don't come to anything, but I think it's premature and I don't think it's the appropriate time to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. You've taken the words right out of my mouth, because I think that was going to be my comments. I think 2 and 3 actually adequately cover that. Thank you. Councillor Truelove.
Well, first I was going to say what Councillor Harrison said. No. It's not really good enough to say, oh, well, the officers could spend some time on this. We've got a very tight list of priorities for this council, and we have to put those against the staffing that we've got and the capacity that we've got. So if it's a very good idea, then it could go up the list, but there are other things on the list. I just think we need to say that we are all in favour of the community shop. And you rightly give credit to the local member, but lots of members have been pressing for this for a very long time.
Yeah.
The reality is, I mean, you started off by saying, or somebody did, that this is a housing area. Well, it is, isn't it? It's nothing else. It's just a housing area. Without the Northern Relief Road, which a lot of purchasers thought they were going to get, and all they've got at the moment is a community hall. So a shop, which you've got to test the feasibility of that really, but that is really where we should start. And if the land is something that we've acquired, then there is a possibility in future of considering other uses of it. Nobody yet has answered my question. What is the funding gap? I'd just like to know what we're talking about.
Yep, I'll bring the officer in here.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So obviously the nature of the gap will depend on the nature of the construction and the size. We've undertaken some sort of very light touch work, if you like. Traditional construction at around 100 square metres, you'd be looking at a funding gap, taking into account the 100,000 that's on the table, of somewhere between 300 and 400,000. If you went for a modular construction, you can bring that figure down substantially. We've also been looking at sort of things like some of the basics that Councillor Whiting mentioned around the services, etc., etc. I'm just waiting on a report that will kind of confirm what the sort of costs would be involved in terms of those basics, almost regardless of what form of the build would take.
Thank you. Councillor Bowen, and then I've got Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of comments, and I agree the levelling up is a huge piece of work, and is one of the priorities. If you put all your eggs in one basket, though, you're not going to achieve as many things as you had hoped for. I disagree about the fourth motion being recommendation being premature. You try and say that to the residents on Great East Hall. They've been waiting there for over a decade for this, and now we've got the opportunity to actually do something. To say it's a bit premature, a bit much. And whilst to say the levelling up on the island is great, but these people on the Great East Hall have been waiting over a decade for this, and now we've got the chance. It's not premature at all. It's needed. Thank you.
Councillor Marchington.
Thank you, Chair. Listening to what everyone's got to say, but I think recommendation 1 is something you should go ahead with anyway, because to actually acquire the land, there's no risk of monetary loss to the council, because the ground would always be worth that value. It's whether you can raise the funding at a later date for other issues. We've already had other estates, especially on the island, where the planned shopping precincts just didn't happen and never did. You know, you end up a little bit sort of 20 years on, but not never what was there before. And so I think we should go ahead with the first stages of this. I'm aware of what's been said about the 4, but I think, again, I slightly agree that it might be premature at this stage, but I think we should not lose sight that we should acquire the ground and get going into that with what we've stated on the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whiting.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back to clarify for Councillor Trudeau, he's not in the room. I mean, I threw some developer names out there because I didn't, we could talk to anybody. The purpose of this is to try to ensure it's in the officers' thinking when they're making their communications and contracts with the landowner when we take the land on, which hopefully through the other 3 recommendations we will do. But we don't want to end up with the heads of terms on those agreements that would then preclude us from doing something to actually deliver what we want to deliver. So the purpose of bringing it forward now as a 4th recommendation is simply widen the scope slightly of the work that the officers are doing, with a thought in mind that there needs to be a way to deliver this, and to deliver the funding gap that we've just heard could be as much as £400,000. And if that's not stuck in the heads of terms when we agree the land transfer and all the other contracts that we'll have to go through, if we don't do it now, it may be very difficult to do it further later down the track. So this doesn't, I don't believe, Councillor Harrison, this creates an awful lot more work for the officers, because at this stage, it's just widening the scope slightly of the piece of work that this committee is going to hopefully ask them to do. If you don't think it's actually a priority for the committee, then presumably you're going to vote against all 4, all recommendations that are before us. But I would urge you to vote in favour of the recommendations 1 to 3 and the new one, recommendation 4, so that we can, as Councillor Bowen give some hope to those residents in Great Easthall and Heron Fields that they will in fact get what they were promised when they bought their homes. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Stevens, and then I think we'll go to the vote on the amendment. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Looking at the recommendations, I think they cover every aspect of what we need in this. And I don't really feel a fourth recommendation is required, because I think it's covered in number 2, in respect of that funded delivery of a planned construction business plan demonstrating financial sustainability. That's all part of what the officers will be looking at, and I think it will be covered. I agree with Councillor Whiting that we do need something there in respect of maybe some more flats or something that's makes it more sustainable. And but I think that's covered in here, and I think I've got faith in the officers to actually look into this and give us the best possible option that we can get out of this. So, do we really need this fourth recommendation? Because I think it's covered here quite adequately. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. So just on those points around capacity, I do think from an officer perspective, the amendment is quite significant in terms of workload implications and is quite different to the original intent and thrust of the report. So the intent underpinning the report was that we would agree to the land transfer to facilitate the delivery of the community shop. So that would be relatively modest in terms of workload, and it would involve supporting, but not driving and not leading. And the amendment takes us out of that zone, and I think puts us in the driving seat in terms of developing and delivering or co-delivering a full-scale project. So I think it's probably useful to note that any future decision around that might go to P&R rather than here, because it's implying a budget and a resource that we don't have. On that resourcing and around something needing to be dropped to allow this to come in, absolutely. I mean, that's by no means impossible, but that is set against the backdrop. My service has a 20% staff budget reduction next financial year because of the budget gap. And it is set against the further backdrop of central government investment in not just Levelling Up Fund, but UK SPF and Rural England Prosperity Fund, where we are committed to delivering that external funding that is again time bound, and that we've set specific objectives and outputs that we'll deliver. So it's not an impossibility, but we could not absorb that within the current capacity, because that capacity is being reduced, and there are more than sufficient demand on that capacity as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's helpful because I think members do need to understand the workload, and we've discussed all those things, levelling up, UK SPF, etc. You've seen what's on the forward programme. These are not things that are done in 5 minutes flat, with your extra pair of hands. They are considered and they require an awful lot of work. I'm also extremely conscious that what is required here is for the community benefit, as it were, as a result of development, and to put even more development onto that space. I think the community would go spare, quite frankly, to find that actually it requires even more development to give them the community item that they should have had years ago, and quite frankly in the previous administration should have done it. So I think that would go down like a lead balloon. Right, I think we'll go to the vote on the amendment. So all those in favour of the amendment, please show your hands. Okay, all those against? Yep. Okay, right, so the amendment is, and one abstention, sorry. So the amendment was lost, and we go back to the substantive item, which is recommendations 1 to 3. Does anyone wish to speak on them? I think we've kind of done this one to death. Right, let's take it to the vote then. Those in favour? That's unanimous by the looks of things. Okay, thank you. Thank you, members. Right, let's go on to Item 8, sound really loud. Is it me? Is my speaker really loud tonight? Must be. Oh, I just don't need the volume, do I? I don't need the speaker. Thank you, Karen. Right, agenda item 8 is page 27 in your agenda pack, and this is the disposal of the old fire engine house, Court Street, Faversham. So I'll ask the officer to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. I'm sure you'll all be pleased to see this is a rather short report from me. I don't propose to read the whole report, but perhaps if I could give you just a précis of the proposals and read the recommendations. It's a quirky little property, it's a grade 2 listed building, former old fire engine house. It's occupied by shelter under a lease, and it's also occupied, the property next door, which is in a separate freeholder, is also occupied by shelter, and the two properties have been linked together by an internal walkway. Consequently, it's quite a complicated one for the council to manage, and the value is kind of intrinsically linked to the next door property. It's rather complicated at rent review and lease renewal time. We've had a proposal from the owner of the next door property to purchase the property, and the details of that are on the exempt pages. And the recommendations are that the terms of the sale of the freehold interest, the property are approved, and then to delegate the processing of that to the head of Regeneration, Economic Development and Property in consultation with the head of Legal Services. And if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you, members. Right, we have a blue paper on this, which has obviously got the commercial element in it. Is there anyone who wishes to discuss it? I think it's quite straightforward, as it's only a few lines setting out the commercial element. Does anyone want to discuss that? Because we'll have to go into closed session. I just ask that members don't discuss the content of that in the open session. No? Okay, so we'll move forward with the open session. Anyone want to discuss this? Councillor Hunt?
Initially, when I saw this, I thought it was a shame to get rid of it because it is a nice little building.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into blue paper, but just to get some clarification, I assume that this building itself has got no services to it without the building next to it, and it's not a separate thing because it didn't seem too much and not worth having at the end of the day. So just to clarify, I'm sure that is the point. But
Thank you, Chair.
David,
yes, I can confirm. And it's basically only a benefit of official occupation with the next door property.
Okay, so that for the mic, that makes sense, is what Councillor Hunt said. Okay, anyone else want to ask any questions, debate this item? No? Okay, let's go to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Right, thank you, members. Okay, item 9. We need this, which is... hold on. Oops. Hold on. We've done 10. Yeah. Right. Yes, we do. Sorry. Let me just... Okay, so item 9 is exclusion of the press and the public. So if... No, we've done that one. Sorry, we've done that already. So we've covered item 10. So now we are on to item 11, disposal of land at Brill Way, Westminster, Sheerness. If I can ask the officer to introduce his report.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, not quite as short as the previous one.
No.
The land in question is approximately, sorry, I've had it a second ago, 3.4 acres. It's been vacant for well over 50 years and marketed twice over the last 20 years by the council through different agents. There was a proposal that was acceptable back in 2013, subject to planning, that was accepted on this site. Recently, the council's planning department has notified the applicant that their planning application had been closed due to lack of progress, and the report basically sets out a proposal to market that property again. And obviously the commercial details again of this are in the excluded item. So the recommendations are to declare that the land at Brill Way is surplus and delegate the head of Regen Economic Development and Property to market the property and agree terms for freehold disposal. And again, with similar delegations thereafter. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I think we've got blue paper on this. Does anyone want to discuss the contents of the blue paper? Do you want a minute to have a quick review? No? All happy? All happy. Okay, so we will stay in open session. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. We've had many false starts over this piece of land over the years. Twice in this report, it says that it's in the local plan, corporate plan, Uncle Tom Cobley and all, as employment use. Would we, and I agree it's surplus, would we, let's just say somebody could buy it and then do something which wasn't employment use. So what sort of caveats, things have we got on it? I know years ago, before I was born, it was a housing estate. And over the years, some people here will know that it has been used for, let's say, housing. You get my drift? And I want to make sure, because there are some people who do have a lot of money and do go around the country buying up land. And I want to make sure that this isn't one of those pieces. Is that vague enough? Did you understand what I'm saying?
I'll ask the officer if he wants to give us some input on the controls and covenants.
You're completely right. The property was previously housing, and I think the terminology used in the report was slums, and that was the terminology it was used for when it was demolished way back when, about 50 years ago. It is obviously in the council's gift as freeholder to restrict the title in any way it sees right in a disposal. But we obviously also have a best consideration approach we need to take. And if there was a purchaser who wished to purchase subject to contract for a residential development, that would obviously increase the value significantly, which is obviously of benefit to the financial situation of the council. So that would have to be a consideration. If we decide to dispose of on a freehold basis and somebody offers a substantial sum of money for an unencumbered freehold, then obviously that is a decision that has to be made, as well as to whether the financial benefit to the council outweighs the necessity for any restrictions on it. I guess is what I'm trying to say is what the decisions you're trying to make, are they around securing a particular planning direction, because I believe we have a local plan for that, or is it around securing the best consideration?
Okay, Councillor Harrison.
I don't think you understand what I'm saying, but not saying. Some people have a lot of money and they can pay well over the odds. We flog this bit of land to said people. My residents will be camped out here with lynches, with a hangman's noose, etc., etc. You know what I'm talking about now. Good.
Please come back.
I have spoken in the report, in the latter part of the report, about ways in which we can guarantee development, and they are fairly limited. But we could make, you could make a decision, or we could make a decision that it is only disposed of on a subject to planning basis.
But not kept in planning for however many years? 7 years?
7 years.
7 years. Okay. Yep. Okay. I've got next on my little list here, I've got Councillor Hunt and then Councillor Marchington. So Councillor Hunt, please come in.
This is similar to what I said with Great East Hall and trying to get the most potential out of this bit of land. Obviously, we haven't got the most potential out of it in the last 50 years. No. And it has been a difficult, so I know that I've had some involvement in the past with this, and we looked at it, just what can be done with it, and it is a difficult site to do. But if we are wanting control that has been discussed about who does what, then the only way really for us to have that control is to redevelop it ourselves. If someone does come along and offers a lot of money for it, then will be doing so because they are going to be making a lot of money out of it. And if that is the case, why aren't we doing something ourselves and making the money ourselves, not just giving it to somebody else? And that's where I think we need to be careful with land. I think probably from what I'm guessing is that over the years we haven't done much with land. This is now being looked at, and I don't want it to be a case of let's just quickly get rid of all this land that we've got because no one's done anything for some time. We have got on here the alternative option of redeveloping ourselves, but it does also say that there is planning constraints affecting the site. I don't know if you've got any more information on what those planning constraints are, because some planning constraints will put a stop to any major development going on anyway. If it's planning constraints that we've just got our own policies that are causing problems, then we change our own policies and make it work for us. So if you've got an idea around that, would be good. But it's just a concern I've got to let other people go making money out of our land when we could do it ourselves.
Thank you. I'll bring David in.
Thank you, Chair. I believe that the planning constraints are on the restricted paper, because obviously they could be considered to be sensitive. With regard to granting ourselves planning and why we aren't doing things like this, and I'm sorry, I'll probably speak for Joanne, so apologies if I misspeak, Joanne, that obviously there's a resource implication in that, and I think you'll probably find that the balance on spending the additional resource to acquire planning consent or come up with a development will be reflected in the purchase price, or at least that's what I'd like to say to you as a valuer.
And yeah, if I can chip in there, I know I've certainly certain situations that the borough finds itself in with certain public services. I've asked them to look at this site as a possibility, you know, it's not gone anywhere, let's just say. But as David quite rightly told me in a previous conversation, that, you know, if there was an interest, they would come forward. If we agree this tonight, we could effectively market this, and those interested parties would then be flushed out, and we would make a decision on the basis of who comes forwards. So we don't have to accept what comes forwards, but at least we would have an understanding of where the market would lie. Is that correct? Yeah, come back.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, obviously, shouldn't say obviously, because it is not obvious from the report, but the intent would be to fully market it and to do that on the basis of no preconceptions. So whether that then hopefully to put it with a more national agent and approach it on the basis that we would consider any and all development proposals. So maybe I should have made that clear in the report, and that might have answered your question. So apologies, that's not the case. And that would also then, I suppose, remove the requirement for officers to do that work, the planning work, by having a full marketing process. That would be my view anyway. So if there was a residential developer, if there was an industrial developer, or, you know, mixed use involving a supermarket, you know, we could flush all of those out, and then obviously we'd be coming back to committee to further any of their interest. Okay.
Yes, Councillor Hunt.
Come back on clear. That makes more sense to me. Thanks for that. Is clearer. Just one comment on the resourcing. I do understand the pressures that we've got with resourcing.
Yeah.
But I think also as members, we need to be considering what is the best value for residents when we're looking at what is effectively residents' land. At the end of the day, we need to get the best we can out of for value. And if there is concerns with resourcing, really, residents don't care about that. They just need to be making sure we get best value for them.
And I think what's contained in the blue paper speaks volumes compared to where we were previously to where we are now. And I think it's fair to say, as a cabinet member, I'd previously approved that we went and got outline planning on something to increase the value, and we sold it at significantly more than was originally indicated. So, and that was a complete departure from the previous administration, and certainly because I had a very heated discussion with officers at the time about doing that, and it paid off significantly for us. So I think it is something that we need to look at, and it might be, as flushing out the interest that we actually do go for permission. But what I must say is that if we do go for permission and it is refused, we do not have a right of appeal on our own land. Okay. So we've got to be fairly certain that we're going to get it. Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Marchington, did you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. You're jumping ahead of where I was anyway, but not to worry. Going back in the historic area of this area, it's referred to as the subject to a clump sum clearance, but everyone seems to forget that those two roads, Cromwell Road and that, were predominantly retired people and definitely over 50s, and retired people tend to have nice, clean, tidy homes and visiting grandchildren, and there was a lot of grief when that came apart. And I can only tell you that majority of Marinetown was in far worse condition than these two roads, absolutely by far. And the plan of the council was to nail that down and have the whole thing put out for redevelopment because we had a growing docks, we had other companies coming in, we were expanding chemical works in the areas. This was a really good area to redevelop a lot. So to put it down on the sun clearance is merely an excuse, and it was the council being very unfair to a lot of the old families. That's the end of that little story, but it is fairly true. I know the interest by the Stevens family, which is Shepherd Industries, they are an old company. I know them well, and they're hundreds of years, at least you're getting on to near 200-year-old family thing that came down from London, and they do think one generation onto another. They own lots of land around Faversham area, down towards Ashford, which is just really purchased, and in 50, 80 years, it'll be worth money. They make decisions outside their own lifetime, which is, as commented before. I'm all for you putting up to try and do something with it, because we have to see it is as it is now. So what to do with it now, I'm just listening to what, and I'll go with whatever the majority want to do here. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 seconds. Right, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? No? Okay, right, let's take this to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous? I think it is. Looks unanimous. This is getting a bit of a pattern. Yes, it is. Thank you. Thank you, members. Right. I think we're done, aren't we? So we've covered items 12 and 13 because we didn't go into the blue paper. So thank you all, members, for your contributions tonight. It's been very good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Meeting closed and